That's loud. I'm sorry. Okay, I want to call the meeting to order for June 10th at 6 p.m. We need to be sure we have a quorum, Dina.
Yes, ma'am, you have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. So we want to do the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation by Pastor Griffin of Cross Timbers Baptist Church. We'll give the invocation, please.
Are we starting with the pledge or the prayer first? I'm sorry.
Prayer.
Heavenly Father, we come before you asking for your blessing and asking for your presence to be here with us during this time. Your word teaches us that where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. The Apostle Paul reminds us when he says, first of all, then I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. And while the prophet Micah reminds us of our responsibility, he has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening with gratitude for the opportunity to serve in this community. Thank you for the city of Willow Park, for its people, and for those who have been entrusted with leadership and responsibility. We ask your blessings upon this meeting. May it be marked by unity, wisdom, and a heart to serve all with fairness and compassion. Lord, guide our leaders tonight. May every decision be made with integrity and aimed at the well-being of every resident. Give clarity of thought, peace in discussion, and courage to do what is right, even when that may not be easy. We pray for peace in our neighborhoods, strength for our first responders, and prosperity for our local businesses. Let the city be a place where justice flows, kindness is shown, and every individual is treated with dignity. Help us to walk humbly, lead wisely, and act justly. May the city shine as a beacon of cooperation, growth, and mutual respect. And may the leaders and inhabitants of Willow Park show the world what it truly means to love and live for Christ. We ask these things in the most wonderful and mighty name of our risen Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Honor the Texas flag.
U.S. pledge.
Sorry. My bad. Sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I've always wondered why we don't do the Texas pledge. So.
You're welcome to do that. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. Under Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you.
You said that first.
You got us on the move.
Fun fact. You used to have to say yeehaw.
Okay, thank you very much. And if you're wondering what I'm doing way over here, this one's sick a little bit. And I'm doing knee surgery in the morning, so I'm hiding right over here. Poor Leah, I'm right here next to her. I'm sorry, I'm in your lap.
Just sneeze.
Yes. So on the minutes from May 13th, there's a change that is being made to those minutes. So we're not making a motion or approving those. Dina's working on that, and she's going to come back to us.
Back at the next meeting.
Okay, so the next meeting, she's going to do that. Okay, perfect. And so next, what we're going to do is I had requested our attorney, Pat, do a discussion on home rule versus general law that we have now. And so also we want him to talk about the process if we so chose to become a home rule in Willow Park. So those are some things that I want him to help us, educate us all on that, the council, myself, and the citizens. I think it's of interest to all of us. So, trying to talk too loud. So, this is just an icebreaker discussion is what I'm going to have him help us with. I'm eager to support the citizens of Willow Park and begin the process if we decide this is a process that we want to follow up with. Willow Park is the second largest city in Parker County. And so I think that's one reason that we need to address it now. And I talked a little bit about that the last time we had a meeting. I don't want to go over that a lot, but I want to mention it. And that's one of the reasons that the population of 5,000 or more, we hit that 8 years ago. And that's why I think it's important for us to talk about that. The other cities, we've got Aledo, we've got Weatherford that are home rule. And so the difference on the home rule, he's going to go into detail. They have the full power of self-government and may take any action in the interests of the citizens' health, safety, and welfare that is not contrary to the Texas and the U.S. constitutions or federal or state laws. The community prepares its charter based on our community norms and values and priorities. Home rule cities define for themselves how they want to be governed. The charter provides a local response to the form of government desired by citizens, defines the structure of the city government, establishes control over the city finances, and limitations on the powers of the city government. Initiative, referendum, and recall are three separate facets of the direct democracy, reserved for exclusive use by the local voters that provide direct remedies in unusual situations. These powers are unique to home rule cities and not available to voters at any other level of government. To recap, a home rule charter may establish various rights, responsibilities, and privileges for the city government and its citizens that are not superseded by state and federal laws included. So the number of council members, their terms, and how they're elected, duties of the mayor, council, and specific staff members, the type of government utilized, citizens' right to initiative, recall, and other referendum, city's right to annex, tax, and provide safety for its citizens, and procedures and ethics. Bottom line, the charter will be created by the citizens if we go that direction. Don't know yet, but it'll be created by the citizens and approved by the citizens rather than by the state-defined general law. So it's the voice of the citizens, which I ran on. And so I want to put that out there. I want Pat's legal perspective. I want him to go over where we are now. Not that I'm loading you up, but there you go, more. Where
It's
we
not covered it all, man.
I know. I want to know. No, you got a large packet. I want in detail where we are now, the distinction between where we are now and home rule. Help us figure it all out, Pat. And then we're going to open it up to the citizens for questions.
Absolutely. Good evening, council and mayor and citizens of Willow Park. As Mayor said, she asked me to make a presentation on home rule cities versus general law cities, kind of the process, if there's any advantages to a home rule or disadvantages, and so that's what I'm going to go over tonight. Can everybody hear me okay? Is this on? All right. Start with, as I said, the purpose of today's presentation is to introduce concepts of home rule law and general law. We're going to discuss preemption, which is a hot button item today in the law. We're going to discuss the form and structure of home rule cities and general law cities and the key differences between home rule and general law, any disadvantages of becoming home rule, and the process, ultimately, if we want to decide to go to home rule, how to become a home rule. As the mayor said on slide number 3, these are the broadest parameters of what the differences between a home rule and a general law city are. A home rule city may do anything authorized by its charter that is not prohibited or preempted by the Texas Constitution or laws of the state or the federal law. A general law city, which we are today, we're a type A general law city. We do not have a charter, and we may only exercise those powers that are specifically granted or implied by state law. So we have limited rights compared to a home rule city. On slide 4, home rule cities, and this is kind of why they're attractive, is they have very broad powers. Home rule cities derive their powers from the Constitution and possess the full power of self-government and look to the legislature not for grants of power, but only for limitations on their power. And home rule cities essentially have an inherent authority to do just about anything that has a public purpose that is not contrary to the laws. An inherent power means it's not necessarily stated, but we have it because of those broad powers. Unfortunately, the Texas legislature has begun to exercise its right to preempt, and that takes away or limits home rule city power. In slide 5, we talk about the legislature giveth and it taketh away. That is preemption in a nutshell. Preemption is a legal doctrine that allows a higher level of government to eliminate or to limit our power of lower level government. And the Texas legislature has been using preemption to limit home rule cities' powers. Each legislative session, it seems like they've ratcheted up that preemption concept. And so historically, and I think what's happened over time, when I first started in city government in '98, the concept behind preemption is the only time a city was preempted if state law had unmistakable clarity that it said you could not regulate in that arena. And what's happened is over time, for example, the alcohol. Cities cannot regulate alcohol except for limiting the distance to sell alcohol from schools, hospitals, churches. There's very limited ability. And it says in the statute we're preempted from regulating alcohol. That's pretty clear. You can understand that. House Bill 2127, which came out in 2023, was enacted. The super preemption bill, or the Death Star bill, is the most darker reference, was enacted, and it basically essentially said we're going to set up all these fields of regulation. They cited a number of codes, and that if you are regulating in these areas where we have these codes, then essentially you're going to have to show the burden that your regulation is consistent with our regulation. That's shifting the burden significantly. Not to mention, in that bill, there's lots of potential for cities to get sued, and it created quite a stir. A number of cities challenged it, and it is still pending in the Supreme Court. Now, it's still the law until it's completely overturned. So I don't know many cities that are following it, but at the end of the day, if it succeeds and survives, then we're going to have to deal with it. And examples of preemption, then on slide 6, this happened a few years ago to us here. We used to have a number of our zoning codes and had limited like certain types of building materials to be on homes and structures. And of course, in, I forgot which year it was, but essentially the Texas Government Code Chapter 3000 was passed. And ultimately it says that we cannot dictate what are the appropriate building materials if the particular international code allows them. We adopt a number of international codes. We're not allowed to change those. Then, I think it was 2023, the juvenile curfew ordinances, which we had one, the legislature came out and said we're no longer allowed to adopt or enforce juvenile curfew ordinances. Again, House Bill 2127, which is that super preemption bill, it's still out there, and it's not good for home rule cities' power. And then this last legislative session, we had House Bill 2844, which the popularity of food trucks. I know many of the cities that I represent are looking at limiting food trucks and having them only limited to certain areas. Now it's getting very difficult to do that. And so House Bill 2844 is limiting our rights again to regulate food trucks beyond state law. Slide 7. I'm going to go talk a little bit about the home rule structure of the government. If anybody has any questions, feel free to stop me. Like I said, I'll take questions at the end, but I'll take them now too. So if anybody has any questions. And so
So back
basically,
on,
home rules, go ahead.
Back on your chart 5, where
Yeah.
the bottom bullet where the city has the burden of proof of proving that our law is passed. So that sounds like it puts a lot of additional
It does.
administrative legal cost on the city.
Legal costs and its potential, because it's not clear. Literally, you'd have to almost go through litigation to litigate the issue of whether or not their field of regulation and our laws were consistent. And so that's why there was a challenge to it as being overbroad and ambiguous, and that's why they were successful at the district court level of overturning. So yeah, it is. It's a huge change in preemption law. And there was another bill that was introduced, 2 bills that were introduced since last legislative session, also super preemption type bills. They did not pass, but this is becoming a common thread. The legislature, in their infinite wisdom, is trying to take away a lot of the ability of home rule cities to self-govern. And some cities take it to the extreme. I'll be the first to admit that. But it's mainly the larger cities, not cities like Willow Park. Austin in particular typically is they regulate and require businesses to, pay benefits to their employees and things of that nature, which, seems pretty extreme when it comes to regulation in businesses. So that's kind of what, obviously I don't know the legislature's exact motives, but I know I've talked to a number of them, and they just don't want cities to over-regulate. And so that's the concept behind 2127.
Okay.
Anything else?
Not right now.
All right.
Any wisdom on when that would get adjudicated in the courts?
It's Supreme Court pending still. No, I do not know.
How long has it been pending?
Since almost 23.
Okay.
So, well, I do have another question. So is the state government essentially trying to push all cities, or at least the smaller ones, to be general law anyway? They take away so
No.
many rights?
No, well, they're taking away the attractiveness of going to home rule. That's what they're doing. Because home rule cities literally have the power of self-governance. So they're limiting that power. So I don't think they're trying to make everybody be a general law city. But that could be the ultimate effect.
So Pat, I'm up here.
Oh, yeah. Sound like from behind.
I know, right? So are they trying to control it at the state level? Is it, for them, is it easier to work with if they have it controlled there? Is that what they're trying
They
to
pass their
do?
laws, and so they figure that's good enough.
Okay.
The mindset is that if we follow state law they've carefully crafted, why do we need to go further than that?
So why is the hurdle at 5,000? And I know you and I have talked about that. 5,000 is the hurdle you get to before you discuss it, which we are. But then it can go from 5,000 and push down to 2,500 people. But why is that hurdle important? What is that?
I mean, the minimum
5,000?
threshold, that is the statute. Home rule, yes, ma'am.
Okay, gotcha.
So why they picked that number, I have no idea about.
Okay.
But that is the threshold that we have to establish before we proceed forward. And what you'll hear later in my presentation, it's 2023. If you look back at the official census data, in 2020 we were at 4,900, I think, something like that. And then 22, I think the estimates from the official census were 6,200. And 23, as part of our ETJ expansion to do the Bell development, Michelle Gelker staff put together an estimate. We thought the population would be based upon utility bills, number of single-family households, apartments, And basically, based upon that, we estimated 8,500 is our population. And we passed an ordinance to that effect, determining that.
Okay.
So that has some deferential effect. Certainly, it's based upon the available data. We also looked at the available census data and other data information. And so we've made that finding, council has, we're in excess of 5,000. So we meet the threshold, as I know it today. So, so that part, how they pick 5,000, I do not know that. Somebody else may know that, I don't.
Okay.
Never heard any rationale behind it.
But once you're at 5,000, if you drop below, you're still home rule.
If you've adopted the home
Yeah,
rule chart,
yeah.
yes.
And
If
so
you've
that's how
adopted-
city-
And that's,
that's how-
and I talked about a number of
Right.
smaller cities that represent, very small now, but they were over 5,000 at one point in time. De Leon, Texas, which you know where that is, very small city. They're home rule. Coleman, Texas is home rule. They're close to 4,000 now. They're smaller cities. There's also even small Gorman, which I used to represent, is also a home rule city. So very, very small city. But those back in the old days when cotton and oil were booming, they were much larger cities, and they dropped. So won't affect it if you drop below the 5,000 if you become home rule. And so, so that's the way it is. Any other questions? All right, on slide 7. Essentially, the home rule, as the mayor mentioned, is governed by the city's charter, which is voted on by the citizens. And that charter is essentially our constitution when it's adopted. And the charter can be changed to adapt to new laws or circumstances. That's part of the beauty of being home rule. You can only amend it every 2 years, however, but you can amend it if circumstances change, the organization change, the desires of the citizens change. And that's part of the advantage of home rule status, is that adaptability. Slide 8. All right, talking about home rule and structure, and the mayor mentioned a lot of these, but basically it will allow us to craft our government to fit our needs and desires. And I've listed some of the major areas, and I think the form of government is critical. Mayor council, weak versus strong, or council manager. Those are two of the primary forms of government. The powers and duties of the mayor, every charter will set those out, whether it's to vote, veto, or force reconsideration. We can establish the number of city council members, which would be larger than what we have now. We can provide for how the council members will be elected, either at large by all the citizens, or by single member districts, or by place. And lastly, or next to last, we can provide for terms that extend beyond 2 years. And I know that's some things. I have some cities that have 4-year terms, which is a long time. Some have 3 years, but ultimately that's something this charter can establish. There's benefits and downsides to all those terms. If you go to 3 years, anything beyond 2 years, you can, so for example, right now, if you had a vacancy in the council, you can appoint somebody to serve on that council for a period of time until the next election. If you get beyond 2 years, you have to have an election to fill that position. That's just part of the downsides of it. You have longer terms to serve, but you can no longer appoint people to serve in those positions for the temporary time period till the next election.
So you would have to have another general election separate? I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, and you can only do elections on uniform election day.
Gotcha.
But you have to wait till May, or whichever the nearest one, November, to have that election. At this last legislative session, they tried to do away with the May uniform election, which, you know, TML thankfully is our advocate, fought hard for us, and I know cities did as well, because you can imagine, just like this, if we wanted to do a charter, you've got one time to do it. That would have been November. So I'm glad to see we still have 2 uniform elections. It gives us some flexibility, and it allows us to be more responsive. And then lastly, the home rule charter can provide for the structure of our administration. What do I mean by that? I know a lot of home rule charters, every time you appoint a department head, for example, some charters say the council has to confirm or ratify them. There's a whole range of gamut of options. The point is that you can structure that, and the certain positions, you can put that in your charter. Right now, we don't have that. The general law, chapter 22, just says you can essentially, other than the city secretary and municipal judge, city attorney or officers, but you can appoint other officers. It's very broad. And so this is a way, again, to give some meat to the structure of your organization. Then next slide, talk about the general law. To contrast that, we are a type A governed by chapter 22. As you well know here, we have a mayor and 5 council members. We could have more, two council members per ward if we were broken into wards. We are not. The mayor is the CEO and is our budget officer for the city. That budget officer, she can allow somebody to help her, but ultimately she's responsible for the budget. So that is one of the nuances of a type A general law city. The mayor doesn't vote except to break a tie. The quorum consists of 3 council members, and that's it. You don't have to have, the mayor does not count towards the quorum. Now, we may have to have 2/3 if we're having a meeting regarding taxation, and so that is a little nuance of general law cities. Under your charter, you would define your quorum, and I don't know any city that has a home rule charter that defines, changes the quorum requirements when it deals with taxation. So it'd just be either 4, 3, depending on the number of council members and mayors you have. Again, we have 2-year terms. Now we could have an election to extend those to 3 or 4-year terms. Next slide. What are the key differences? And the mayor mentioned a number of these. And these are, as you said, bedrock issues when it comes to home rule cities. Initiative and referendum and recall are all citizen rights to petition the government. Initiative is the right for citizens to come forward and say, we want this legislation passed. They would present a petition, and depending how we draft it, the number of citizens would be required to sign it. We'd usually have a form petition, all of which they would present to the council to say, we want this legislation to be considered and passed by council. If council denies it, and it is a proper area for initiative, then there is an election held on whether or not that is adopted. Referendum is the opposite. It's when the citizens decide we want to repeal legislation that has been passed by the council. Same process, you present a petition, and if it meets the requirements, we either grant it or make it go to an election. Sometimes those rights are more complicated. I had a few years ago where a citizen group wanted to do an initiative to order us. One of our cities has its own electrical system, and so they wanted to pass an ordinance that ordered them to sell their electrical system. And one of the tenets of initiative is that initiative only applies to legislation type ordinances and processes. If it deals with money, I mean, you can imagine if they said, here's a budget ordinance we want you to adopt, for example. Well, typically any budgetary documents or dealing with money are not proper topics of initiative or referendum. Otherwise, it would ruin the whole process of budgeting, potentially. So recall, of course, is the ability of the citizens to remove a city council member. All 3 of those are not part of the general law city process. Also, many charters have ability of the council members to remove their own colleagues. And of course, those need to be carefully crafted, because to me, when the voters at the ballot box vote somebody in, you don't need to be, cavalier in removing somebody. But certainly if there's a number of absences. Typically, you have a process set up that if they miss so many meetings without excuse, and if, if they're ill or something of that matter, you would grant that exception. You have a process, due process to bring the councilman forward to defend themselves, but you still potentially have the ability to remove it. Also, I've had a number of allegations through the years of intentional violations of the charter you got to deal with. And those usually you address those in your charter, that if you violate those provisions intentionally, then you're subject to removal by the council. So, but again, you don't have to put that in there. But those are key things that are not in general law. Term limits is another thing. Some cities believe in it strongly, and it's in their charter. Some don't. And then lastly, charter amendments. You have the ability to amend your charter every 2 years. So have the ability to adapt. Next slide, please. All right. So where does that leave us for general law city? Well, just as I said, no right of initiative referendum, no right of recall. What happens if you want to remove a city council member? Well, you've got to file a petition with the district attorney and district court. And the grounds of that have to be incompetence, official misconduct, or intoxication on or off duty caused by drinking an alcoholic beverage. Kind of strange, and certainly the process is a very stilted process. Rarely goes forward. You have to have the DA has to essentially deem it to have some merit before he will go forward on the prosecution of it. I've had a couple of these through the years, but they've never gone forward. And so that is a very limited ability in a general law city to remove a city council member. Again, there are certainly no term limits set out in the general law, and there is no ability to change the structure of the government. Next slide. So, what are the disadvantages? Have we talked about it? No, really, there really are not. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the costs are probably the only thing we have to just remember. It can be costly. It's going to take some time. That'll take both staff and volunteers' time who are on the Charter Commission. So, I mean, time is money, but it's a manageable cost at the end of the day. I think, some cities hire consultants. I will be glad to help meet every week with the commission. Whatever you want to do, election, of course. If we don't have an election that year, we'll have to pay the election cost. I don't know kind of year if it's 10 to 15, typically it's 10 to 15,000 for an election. Could be a little less, could be a little more. Other than those costs, there's really no disadvantage, provided we adopt a good charter, and that means one that's clear and unambiguous. And that's to me, if we have a good charter, then there's no downside to the charter. So, how do we get there? As I said, we have, slide 13, we have the number of inhabitants, 5,000. And I've chronicled the history there. But long story short, in 2023, and I assume we have not dropped since then, I know we're growing. So I'm sure we're probably more than that. I haven't talked to Michelle about how many more, but I pulled my notes from her calculation in 2023, and we the city council adopted a resolution determining that fact, which is deferential if we have it based upon the best available, which we did. So we're there. We're at the threshold to start the process. What is the process? Next slide. We have to have a charter commission. The process isn't that complicated. We just have to have a charter commission in place. We can either do it by election to seat it, which is a cumbersome process. We've literally put on the ballot, shall we establish a charter commission on the ballot? So if we do that, the mandatory number based upon our population would be 15. We would then get that decision from the voters, and then the council appoint the charter commission. Or you may appoint the commission by the council mayor. And there's no limitation on the number, although I wouldn't probably go beyond anywhere near 15, or at least I think 10 to 15 is a manageable group. But that'll be up to y'all ultimately, who you want to.
So here's a question, Pat. So we do 10 to 15, let's say if we come up with that number. Do we have one person on council and the mayor help with that, or what's
You
the
can.
process?
I just had one city, we did a charter amendment. They had the entire council, plus about 6 citizens serve on the charter commission, so to speak.
Okay,
Um,
so it's fluid number?
And if you have a quorum, of course, you have to post it as a
Oh,
public
right.
meeting every time. I really think it's a good thing, regardless, because it's a very important process. So I would advocate we post every meeting anyway, regardless who serves.
Right, okay.
It's open to the public. They can come listen to our thoughts and processes, have input. And I think that's the spirit of the Charter Commission, is
Right.
to serve the citizens and what the citizens want. So that's how I would do it.
So they're not subject to TOMA?
Not necessarily, but
Okay.
I would make them that way.
Yeah.
I think in our charge to appoint the commission, I'd make them subject to TOMA and make sure that it's all public process. And so, because ultimately, I think depending on how, since there's going to be very little oversight beyond that, the typical concept of TOMA is if a committee is making a decision that's going to be rubber stamped, which in essence it will be, then it'd be subject to TOMA. So we're going to make them subject to TOMA, period.
Okay.
So,
Open records as well?
well, yeah, anything that is city business.
Okay.
So that's really, now, the next slide. The next slide is dealing with the uniform election date. The next uniform election date is November 4th, 2025. That means we'd have to call the election by August 18th, 2025. That would be a nearly impossible task and would make us rush through it. Typically, it's going to take anywhere from 6 months. It just depends. When we had our charter amendments, just on 10 charter amendments, we were pushing it in 3 months. Just depends. It depends on the level of discussion, the level of disagreement. You could have spirited debates over things that you would never think would be big issues. Just depends. But the more realistic would be May 2nd of 2026. That's about 7 months. We have to call it February 13, 2026. So that'd give us a little over about 7 months if we appointed a commission in July. So that's the more realistic approach. Once we get the charter commission to get the proposed charter in place, and we call the election, we got to mail out the charter to the citizens, to each registered voter in the city 30 days prior to the election.
Pat, may I ask a question on that?
Yes.
My question on that is, that's a physical copy of the charter mailed to each voter. So if a household has 2 or 3 voters in it, that's 2 or 3
Correct.
copies of it. And these charters can be how long, typically?
Anywhere from 30 to 50 pages.
Okay.
So what happens to the existing regulations or laws that we have on the books now? They just roll over because they were all done under general?
Yeah. Again, our charter itself will deal with structure, processes. They won't be the actual ordinances that we adopt. So our ordinances will remain in place. We'll have the ability, of course, to fine-tune those ordinances, either make them stricter if we want. If we were limited, for example, we passed a sex offender ordinance in 23, I think, 22 or 3. And of course, under general law cities are limited to what the government code says they can adopt on that ordinance. Whereas home rule cities are usually much more strict. They have, for example, under the state law, Chapter 341 of local government code, you can only prohibit sex offenders from being within 1,000 feet of a child's safety zone, which is defined as schools, parks, playgrounds, places where children frequent, whereas most home rule cities, I know certainly up in the Metroplex, I've worked on a number of those ordinances where you have up to 4,000 pushing it. And sometimes if you look at the residency, you have both a residency restriction, they can't live within a certain distance from those childs, so it's much more aggressive. So we'll have an ability, certainly, if we become home rule, to revisit ordinances that we have in place and have an opportunity to make them sure.
So there's a multi-step process. We got to get the
Yeah,
charter in
process.
place, have the election, and then we'd have to go through, if it is approved, then we'd have to go through and revisit all the ordinances to update as needed.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah, it could be, that part, you're right, it could be expensive, but at the end of the day, you don't have to do it overnight. You do it as you prioritize.
so with all the legal fees and everything, I would assume this is going to be a multi-six-figure effort for us over the years, I would think. That makes sense, or?
I think that's on the high end.
I mean, again, you don't have to change your sex offender ordinance. For example, it's on the books. It will remain in effect. I guess it's served us well so far. I haven't heard any issues. I have to talk to the chief. If not, we'll just visit. So I would say the ordinary course of business, which we should update our ordinances periodically anyway, or at least review them. I mean, so I don't view it as being a mass effort that would require you to budget significant dollars to address them immediately. Now, there's some areas, again, with preemption, cities are now kind of falling back to the basics more, and I don't have a problem with that. We've never been we don't over-regulate here in Middle Park. We've never done that. So is that a function of us being general law, or has it been a function of the council's personality? I think it's a function of the council's personality. We tried to be business-friendly and at least, not over-regulate. So that'll be up to y'all largely what you want to.
So I have a question, Pat. On the, as far as what we're looking at, the general law, what was the last date that was signed in by this council, and what date was that done?
I mean, when we became a general law type A city?
When was the last time? Do you review that every year? When's the last time everybody signed off on it? When did we start it? And then how often does it get reviewed? How does that work?
I don't know what you're really asking.
So what was the date that everybody signed off on general law? And how often do we review it? Do we do it once a year, we review
I mean, you
it?
talk about population or?
So is the general
I
law?
think-
The general
What you're
law.
asking.
General laws by default.
Yeah, we are. a
By
general
Yeah,
law
by
city.
default. So when-
So we
Based
don't
on
review.
population.
When you're
General law cities
incorporated.
could be type A, B, or C. Based
Right.
on our population, we're type A.
So we went from B to A, right?
I don't-
Did we ever go to B to A?
I don't know.
Because it says 600 people in B.
Yeah.
And then we're larger, so at some point, I'm guessing we
I
went
don't know.
from B to A.
We were at A when I got here in the January of 2018.
I'm sorry, what date?
January 2018, y'all were type
I think we've been in type A for at least 10 years, maybe more.
Okay,
A. I don't know the answer.
okay.
No, it is not changed.
Can we ask the crowd? Because I think there's one person that might know. Pat, can we ask the crowd?
Sure.
Gene Martin, can you
Gene.
stand up, please?
Short answer, Gene.
Can you come to the mic?
Anybody not here?
Brevity, Gene, brevity.
Yeah. It's for the
That's what I
online.
said. Neat. 3 minutes.
No, this doesn't count for that.
Oops.
I like you.
Well, I hope I get my 3 minutes soon, but I am
We'll
responding
restart
to.
Yes,
too.
thank you.
Right?
Yeah, okay. So Willow Park was originally incorporated as a general law type A city, I forget what year, 63,
Okay.
I think?
Okay.
Yes over here. You may have asked the wrong person.
Is that Rose?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
No,
Gene,
That's it.
appreciate you.
That was quick.
I knew someone would know.
Wow.
Pat, I do have an additional question. So if the commission prepares a charter and we have an election, are there limits on how that's promoted by the city, or just like a typical
Yes.
bond or whatever? The city just has to remain neutral, and promotion of the adoptance of the charter is, the commission is able to, if they're an appointed commissioner?
Can't use any city resources
Okay.
to promote the charter. So, you can either have special interest groups, citizen groups that
Okay.
come forward and do it. The charter commission themselves, as long as they're not on city time. I mean, council can speak on a matter, but you don't want to be in City Hall, up here using the City Hall as a backdrop or anything like that. You can't use any city staff. You can't issue handbills or pamphlets about it from the city staff. But as long as you do private dollars, if you're on the charter commission, you can go around and talk to citizens saying, we're promoting this charter, would love for y'all to vote for it. Here's the little question and answer we could have. We can have informational packets from the city itself explaining the charter propositions, but at the end of the day, we can't advocate for them. So not with city dollars or city time or city cents.
Okay.
I have a question and a thought. The thought is the more you talk, the more money I see being spent. And the citizens of Willow Park have always complained about the money spent. And we can talk about this may not be as much as we think, but as in most projects, it's always more than what we think. So I think that's something to take into consideration, that, how much money are we willing to spend? And is it absolutely necessary for going from general rule to home rule and doing that? And I think that's something that really needs to take some consideration.
Agree.
Because the more you talk, from packets to mailing flyers, that kind of thing, it becomes more and more expensive. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. The question also that I have is, how does home rule change or not change the role of the mayor? Or the potential to change the role of the mayor?
I just glossed over it, but ultimately what the charter, you can either have the charter says the mayor votes, or you could keep it like it is now, where they don't vote, or you could make it to where they have veto power. I've got a number of cities, one of them just has veto power. Now, a veto power can be overridden by a 2/3 vote.
Right.
So it's not an absolute veto, but it's really more of a reconsideration type. Or the mayor votes. I have one city that's the way it's set up, the mayor votes. So that's what the charter would set up, is that type of it'll set up each, the qualifications of the council and the mayor, and then their duties, powers, and responsibilities all be set out.
Okay. And how does that play into effect with employees? Does that give the potential for the mayor to have more control over employees, hiring, firing, that kind of thing? The potential?
Well, that would be like a strong mayor form of government, like we talked about the forms, which most cities in Texas, about 90% of the home rule charter cities are council manager forms of government.
All right. Council forward.
Yeah, well, it's
More or less.
basically the council and the mayor select a professional to run the city. Typically, the council sets forth policy for the city manager to follow. The city manager is over most all the employees except for the city attorney, the city judge, and the city secretary. And so the council would appoint the city secretary and the city attorney and the city manager. That's what.
In the end, does this cause more work for the council and the mayor, home rule versus general rule?
No, I don't think it causes more. I don't think, to be honest with you, if you set it up as a council manager form of government, it would be operated very similar to the way we've operated before. It would just give clear, the difference now we have under Chapter 22, we are not a Chapter 25 city manager form of government. That's another general law. You have to do it if you're under 5,000. You could have gone to the city manager form, where it makes it almost like a council manager form of government, more formal. What we're operating is under, right now, is a type A where we just appoint a city administrator and then we set forth his duties and responsibilities in ordinances. We have an ordinance that sets forth what the city manager's responsibilities are, and that's adopted. So, no, I don't think it'll require, again, it's how you set it up, and you know, there's so many details of a charter. For example, and I hate to even mention, but we adopted a code of conduct in one city, and we were literally mired in code of conduct hearings. You know, one councilman filing against another. I mean, there's things that can make. I mean, there's accountability, and unfortunately, the political process sometimes creates a lot of tension and problems. So that's why that's not necessarily an issue in the charter. I would not put that in the charter. But again, power of self-governance, we will decide kind of how we want to draft our government, but it doesn't necessarily create more work for the mayor.
I see potential for more nitpicking, I guess.
Well, you know, what you'll find is when we do the actual charter, you know, there's so many details about, you know, the removal. You know, there's certain things that are potentially very controversial. Removal of council members, for example. And in the recent city that we did a charter amendment on, we actually, the Charter Amendment Commission wanted to allow us to remove a council member for a violation of a code of conduct as amended, as adopted and could be amended. Well, I mean, I discourage that because it's just, again, I really believe that recall is the proper process to remove voted in council members because the citizens spoke and voted them in. Recall means the citizens spoke and voted them out. And I think that's the way it needs to be. I mean, trust me, recalls are very demoralizing and terrible for a city. I don't encourage them. But my point is that if it gets bad enough, that should be the process. Instead of having the group of council remove somebody. So those issues like that, depending on how, I mean, they're very difficult to navigate in a vacuum. But I think if you go to it with the spirit of trying to make it a fair charter and one that's not on, you can always amend it later if you see things that you didn't address or you want to address later. But
Which always costs more money.
it does. It costs more money.
Pat, we need to wrap this up because we've got people
Absolutely.
waiting too.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I'm finished.
And could we get her name, please, and address?
Janice Miller, 708 Queensway.
She's on.
Okay, so Janice, you were one making the comments. Go ahead.
I got one question on the general law type A, as far as voting goes. Is there any mechanism or anything that would allow the mayor to vote other than a tiebreaker, or anything that we could do to allow that to happen?
I mean, there's no formal, under the law, we can't change the law. Now, you can always have her give her opinion. I've got a number of mayors that will, I mean, mayors lead as much as anything. That's their role. And so she can always say, I'm in support of this, or I'm not in support of it. I mean, she has the ability to advocate and to lead the discussion. She is the presider, but she doesn't vote.
So there is no avenue for it?
No, we can't change the law. That's part of the downside of the general law.
Just want to make sure there wasn't something there we
So do I vote with a tie or not at all?
Yes. Yeah,
With
yeah,
a tie?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
Any questions for council? Any
questions
more questions?
from the council?
I do.
Sorry, before I move on.
Pat, is this something you could handle as far as the legal review, or are we looking at taking on outside counsel, bringing in someone else to begin to review these processes if there were?
If we do it in May, I could do it, yeah. for
Okay.
sure. Like I said, I would have a day a week. I'm assuming we would meet at least once every 1 week or 2 weeks. This depends. I would put together, we'd sit down, I could probably have a draft charter, look at it, we can discuss issues. I've got a couple of really good articles that analyze charters, let the commission read those, see what they're, discuss each one. It takes a lot of time just in the discussion process because at the end of the day, not many charter commission members are going to be familiar with structures of the government. And so it depends on, if we have council members and citizens who are familiar with local government, it certainly is not as tall a task to get them up to speed. But really, main thing is just getting them to understand what they're adopting and their options with each thing. And that takes some time. But if we have it, like I said, if we have it February 13th, that's 7 months, we should have no problem at all. I can help with that.
Well, moving beyond that, like say it's put in place, it passes, and there becomes issue for review, are you still the person that we need to look to? Or at that point, if established, I'm just making sure, like,
I can do it.
from a time perspective.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure, yeah.
Good deal.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to make sure.
Absolutely.
Pat, is there a requirement to serve on the Charter Commission outside being a citizen? Do you have to be a registered voter?
There's no requirement. I would definitely make them citizens. I would limit them to citizens
Okay.
of the city because it's their charter.
Okay, any other questions of the council before we move out to the citizens? No?
Question for you. As far as what you said tonight, I see no disadvantage, only advantages for the citizens of the park.
I don't, not really any disadvantages per se. And Home Rule City is not a panacea. It doesn't correct or change the world. It is a different form of government. It does allow for more citizen input through, I've only been through 28 years, one initiative referendum. But just the discussion or the power of it sometimes gets the parties together to discuss. So, I think that's, at the end of the day, those were all kind of nuclear options in a lot of ways, but those were options that you have that I think makes it communication important. So,
Do we have any way of collecting data from neighboring cities that have gone through this process and look at the cost associated with something like that, like Aledo?
We happen to have somebody on staff who just did that in the city that's to the south and east.
Uh-huh.
David? Yeah.
So the budget is bigger than a bread box? How much are we talking?
No, I don't remember exactly the number. I do remember the mail out that we had to do to every citizen. And if you have two, like Eric asked, 2 or 4 or 6 people that are registered voters, every single person gets a copy of that charter. It goes to their address. So that's a huge job for staff to get all that done. But I know it was a long process. We had, I think, 13 commission members, so that if we had a tie situation, we would have the 13 would be, the uneven number to make it.
And how much staff time, paid staff time did it take over a period of process, you think? Or
For the
Just to get-
mail-outs
just to
or
get through the point
everything
of
in
the
general?
election?
It was probably about 4 or 5 months. When we pushed hard to get it on a November ballot. We started.
And that's about all you could get done during that
The end of
time?
May, 1st of June, we started, and we met every other week. Until we'd almost right up to the deadline before we had to contact the county and say, hey, we need to do a charter election. And then after the election's over, then you have to do all the other stuff that goes with it and filing it with the state. And there's a lot of stuff you have to do.
Okay.
So is there no modern technology? I mean, we can't use modern technology and send that out digitally and save money? That makes no
I don't
sense
think
at all.
so.
Sounds good, Sean. I like it.
So it sounds like we're going to be bringing on additional staff to support in one manner or another for at least a period of probably several months or so.
Yeah,
So-
it was probably a total
Okay.
close to a year by the time we got all finished with it, and then it was all said and done. And then we did a transition for terms. We changed from 2-year to 3-year terms, and we transitioned people, depending on your place and what was selected, that was decided by the commission. And so therefore, like place 4 got an extra year to catch up with place 3, who had to have 3 years. It was just, so we had to keep track of all of that for 3 election cycles. So we got everybody to 2-year terms, so.
But every time we start digging into this, it looks like the cost just to get to the election keeps going up. So I go back to the multi-six figure.
I don't think it was that much. I don't remember the cost. We had a consultant and 2 city attorneys, and then staff members, myself and the city administrator that attended the meetings. We had no council. It was all citizens, other than staff that was on the commission.
So we need to look into the cost, definitely. David, you had a question? Yes, you can sit.
We have a ton of debt and a ton of spending, and then we bring up home rule, and you guys are like, it's gonna cost a lot of money, guys.
So it would make sense to look into the
So,
cities that have done it, right? How much is
I'm
it?
just saying, like, all of a sudden you guys are concerned about spending.
Frankly, I'm always
Opposite
concerned
of
about
what you
spending,
just
so
said.
I don't know.
You're gonna
what to
spend it on the
say.
city, you might as well spend it on the people first.
Well, and I think we've got some more research to do on that, and I am interested in the cost, and let's look at that, because the cities that have most recently done it can help us with that. I agree, we don't want extra cost, but we do want to look into it, so I agree that we will do that. And we have people that want to make comments. Janice, you've asked questions. Did you still want your 3 minutes?
No, well, look, at another board meeting, at another council meeting.
Okay, so you can sign up again.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, so I have two other ones that have signed up.
Before we move to that, I got a
Yes.
question for council. And Greg, not saying you're the only guy here, but you may be the only one who knows, but this committee was formed years back and it died in the water. Does anybody know what happened with that?
Gene, you know?
2009, I think.
No, I don't think, there was nothing.
Something about that in a minute.
Okay.
I'm not calling you old guy either, I'm just asking, so.
Okay, so you'll address that when you come up?
I will.
Okay, so first up, we have 3 minutes. Marcy Galley. Do you need her address? You have it right, Dina?
It's on the form.
So you don't need it
So
from
I don't
me?
need it, no.
Okay.
Hello, good evening. It's been a while. I want to say thank you for bringing this to the city. And it is very refreshing to have new leadership at the helm that will listen to the public. I'm very happy to hear all the concerns with the budget because we're getting ready to go into budget season. And I know that our budget has gone up, our debt's gone sky high over the last 8 years. And I'm surprised that we haven't taken steps already to become home rule. Any document that's going to give the people more power on referendum, initiative, and recall, that should be done. It should have already been done. I know about the old talks back in '09, and I knew that a charter document did exist. I am not sure why that stalled out, but again, I'm just hoping that this council will do the right thing and proceed so that the public doesn't have to go and get the signatures to force y'all to do this, because we can, under Local Government Code, Chapter 9. Anyway, I hope y'all choose to do the right thing, give the power to the people. Love it that the public actually gets to raise their hand and ask questions. That's so refreshing. Anyway, thank y'all so much. Good to see everybody again.
Okay, Jean, you are up. Jean Martin.
Evening, all.
Evening.
Yes, the city council already created a home rule charter committee in 2009. It came up with a 36-page document, at least formatted the way this one is. And it didn't cost anything. The reason it didn't go forward is we didn't have 5,000 people at that time. But preparing for the point in time where we did have 5,000 people, the city council thought it would be a great idea to have something in place. So we have at least a straw man in place at this point that, and I'm sure that in the intervening 16 years, good thinking, rational thought, how to treat the citizens of the city has changed a lot, right? I should hope not. I think we really should recreate that scenario. We really should create a home rule charter committee to redo this. And partly the way we approached it was to look at home rule charters from all around the state of Texas. And we picked from this one, and we picked from that one. And so I think we have a good starting point, but I don't see why a charter committee couldn't do the same thing again. That committee was chaired by a reasonable person from the council. Had two previous council members on it, myself and Larry Bushwar. I really don't remember the names of the other 10 people who were on it. None of them are in this room.
My wife was on that committee.
Again, the exercise of running a home rule charter committee may cost a couple $100 in printing expenses to go through drafts of stuff. The total cost to put more power in the hands of the citizens of this city, I think is insignificant. Any questions?
Gene, on that one, is that something, is there a basis there that they could work with, starting with that? Is it, I mean, I know it's old, but could they use that? I mean, you obviously have a copy of it. I've never.
Seriously, 16 years isn't that old. I mean, the legislature has done lots of stupid stuff in between.
How do you really feel?
I mean, what Pat was saying about preemptiveness. First off, I'm not sure that any of that preemption that got into home rule ability wasn't also an effect on general law cities, so I'm not sure that's even a player. But yeah, again, I think this is a potential good starting point. Are there other really good examples of other people's home rule charters that we didn't look at, that we might find and incorporate? Sure, I think there's lots of, in fact, there's one other aspect to this. And I'll give Rose a little bit of credit. Putting the polling mechanism in place is a way to get information out to the citizens. And if this committee comes up with a section on, well, how is the council supposed to work? And that is distributed for comment and polling information from the whole city, I think that's a great idea too.
Okay.
So I think the resources available to run a home rule charter committee today is infinitely better than it was 16 years ago.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Jean.
there you go.
So my request would be for us to put this on the agenda for next meeting, because we haven't really moved along here, but we haven't really gotten into what forms the citizens or the charter committee would even fill out to be eligible. And you have thoughts on that, I'm sure, Pat, that we can address on our next meeting?
Certainly, if you want to have an advertisement process for people that are interested, you get the number of people interested, then the council discusses those at the next meeting. Or I don't know if it's going to be enough time, but you might.
Okay.
What,
So-
if, I knew you and I were going to compete
go
there,
ahead.
Eric,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
So yes, I think looking at what the next step would be, my personal notes that I have here would be to direct our staff, Pat, the mayor, to work with Pat, city manager, to identify a relative structure for the commission, potentially how many members we're looking to add to it.
Okay.
With respect to a general estimation of cost of what other cities might have incurred in recent years for costs of it. Add what the time commitment we think is. I hear weekly, every other week, I think, as we ask citizens to potentially sign up for that, we need to tell them up front what those expectations are, just so they know it's not come to one meeting and we've got a charter. How we're going to do the applications, how that process will work. I'd also like to know, maybe not upfront, but what, if council is not included on the commission, what the input to council would be, kind of as updates every council meeting, every couple of months probably, of where are we on it, what are the issues we're looking at. And then I do like the idea that was just brought up by Jean of how could we potentially work polling of citizens on parts of the charter? Is that possible to do that? Is that advisable to do that? So really, those are just some of my questions to say if we can identify that and put it together in a structure that we can pass a motion to form a commission. We'll have some more information that we know what that looks like. So if I could.
So do you have a
step in.
time frame that you're thinking?
I would
from?
be fine to see if you want to put it on the next council meeting, whenever you can get some of those and have a cohesive package for that.
Okay.
Right, so to our mayor's point, I kind of like the idea of where maybe we could put some input into possible formulations of what a committee would look like on this, and then that way, at our next meeting, we can actually discuss what committee we would like to see, have some input, and then that way, we have something we can go forward with and really start to make progress on this. And
Right.
Agreed. I think it's important that if we're looking for citizen input, we are able to get that word out so that people can apply and get involved. So, I don't want to rush naming people to a commission and not have people have the opportunity to understand what we're doing and have time to raise their hand, so.
And possibly a short, we don't want like a 5-page, it's, right?
Right, no,
It
I'm
doesn't
just-
need to be long, right?
Just something where
You think?
we're identifying what we think it looks like and just a little more education other than the people who have come or watched this tonight, that we make an effort to get the word out there that we are looking at this and we want people to ask questions and get involved, so.
So do we need a motion on that to put it on the next?
A motion to postpone, it says discussion action, so someone tell me, do we need a motion to postpone or?
No.
Pat says no. He says move along. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I said you
Move
don't
on.
have to.
I know what you said. I'm helping you. You're welcome. Okay. So our next discussion item will be number 3. Yes.
Two quick comments.
Yes.
One,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think, what Leah said, I think that the committee, we worked for about 3.5 months to come up with this.
Okay.
If that gives you a little bit.
Yeah, I think that'd be great to get that information for some other cities and recent, whether the process is.
And one other comment, I've also looked at the census from 2020, and the fact that it showed like a few less than 5,000 made me wonder if they counted anybody who was in the Alito post office area.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Okay, now, back to number 3, which is the discussion, possible action of creating a citizen financial oversight committee. I think that this issue, again, helping us with transparency, and we use, so there's several other committees, but I know the parks, we have committee for the parks, and so this is not an unusual discussion, but that's one of the reasons when I was knocking on doors that people said, we want to talk about the finances. And I think they want to be involved, not necessarily oversight, but they want some involvement. So I would like to see the same type of vehicle, a forum, and how we bring in the citizens to actually have a voice to do that also. So I would like to see that going forward for our next meeting also. That's discussion?
So yes, I would have a question regarding, and Pat probably can answer this, our other boards and commissions have ordinances that establish them. And so to have a committee, we don't necessarily have to have an ordinance establishing that.
I would suggest you do.
Okay.
Because we need to set out what their tasks or duties are going to
Okay.
be, what their role will be, any criteria we would have for meetings, things of that nature.
Okay.
Does the council do that? You help the council do that, or what?
Yeah,
How do we do
whatever y'all decide to do, then we'll draft up an ordinance that sets up the committee parameters.
that? Okay. So we can go forward and look at that?
Do you envision this for any and every dollar spent, certain thresholds? Is this something that comes for, like with planning and zoning, this comes forward with a favorable recommendation from planning and zoning, and then council votes on it? What is kind of your thoughts or visions for how it
Well,
would work?
the elephant in the room right now is the budget, right? And we have a deadline for the budget and everything else. So correct me if I'm wrong, is that something that makes sense to talk about with the citizens? I mean, budget is big as far as an issue. Does it make sense to do that?
So,
Your
correct me if
thoughts?
I'm wrong, so with our budget, we got INS and M&O, so those are pretty much set. I think, we're not gonna deviate too much on labor, we're not gonna deviate too much on chemicals, we're spending on water treatment, we're not gonna deviate too much on any other operational costs, and then we got our fixed expenses that we're paying on debt for roads, water system, and sewer, excuse me, in
Right.
this building.
Right.
So that's probably at least 95% of our budget, I would assume, right? So we got maybe 3 or 5%
I think what you're asking is there a lot of discretionary spending in the budget?
Right.
Typically, there's not, because you're gonna pay staff, you're gonna pay benefits, you're going to make sure there's gas in the vehicles and there's vehicles to have gas in. The budget, and me and Pat had this discussion last week, the budget pretty much writes itself because we don't have a lot of discretionary spending. You're going to update one of the items later on is health insurance, and what's that increase going to look like? And so those are things that go into the budget. In terms of citizen participation or transparency, typically we have put the budget out there 60 days before adoption. Typically we do it first week of July, right as soon as we get back from July 4. We typically adopt the budget in September, so that's 60 days for the public to review the budget. You will have 2 budget workshops. I think that's in the budget calendar, that we're going to be looking at later. Those can be as participatory as council likes, and I think you'll have a lot of comment in those budget workshops. But you do have a real deadline for adoption. And there's another component that's not in the calendar that Pat reminded me of this afternoon. We're looking to adopt the budget around September the 9th with a fail-safe on September 23rd. We had to do it by October the 1st. If we do not adopt a budget, we revert back to this year's budget. In terms of construction of the budget, it's Chief Lacey and I having an hour here and an hour there when our schedules can get together and we can talk about the STEP program that he wants, or the fleet management program that he wants, or Michelle talking about, a new piece of equipment that Public Works needs. Those are meetings that we kind of just have as available as staff. Are you suggesting that you'd want to have those staff meetings
Well,
kind of codified, for lack of a better term?
Greg, your question is my vision for it, and I'm open to ideas and thoughts that y'all have, having been here a while, is I'm not anticipating the charter, the city committees, the oversight committees, I'm not anticipating them coming in and going, we think you should spend this much more, or really changing the budget, but I think they just want a voice and the education, and maybe there won't be so much question if they actually have the education. I don't see, but I mean, y'all might have something different in mind, but I don't see a negative in them understanding it more, right?
I guess my listening to the discussion, and I take, we do have budget coming up, our very next council meeting that will be discussed. I think we have determined, especially with Mayor Palmer, that we want to have a pretty robust and in-depth discussion, not just a presentation of numbers and do you have any questions. So I think Brian has committed that it will be very involved as far as the explanation. So one of my approaches here would be, if we're going back and looking at a potential forming of a committee with an ordinance, that's going to take time, a little bit of time of staff. So if we focus on having our council meeting workshops, potentially extra ones if we need to add them, extra dates if we have a lot of discussion and question, having them very open, all just like this. Everyone here doesn't have to say they're on the Financial Oversight Committee. They get to sit in the room with the budget discussion, along with anyone watching at home. The idea of we're trying to make it open, have the questions, learn about what's going on. If necessary, request a third workshop if needed so that we can address those. Then we can, as we're doing that, address the idea of an official oversight committee. But I certainly don't want to slow down the budget because we're legally required to adopt it.
Right.
So
do we put it on the next time to discuss it again as far as?
Or as we're doing the budget, I think we want to advertise again and say we will be having, I'm just looking at the budget calendar, a workshop on enterprise funds on June 24th. We want everyone to tune in, come prepared to ask questions, prepared to get an education on what enterprise funds are first, then be prepared to ask questions so that we can go back. So my idea of using our council meetings instead of setting up additional meetings with a committee to make that how we approach it during the budget season specifically. So, and then if that determines we end up with citizens that have a lot of questions and they want to be involved in the quarterly financial reports, well, maybe we talk about forming a committee then that gets a little more involved. But I'm concerned with the schedule that if we try to get an ordinance in place, form a committee, we're going to be starting our budget process in August if we're waiting on
So you're thinking like next year we'll go back to the finance committee process?
you could
After
form
we're
it
done?
in the meantime. If we feel if that's something the citizens say, we wanted this, then it can be, now that we've seen the budget process, we have quarterly reports. We want you to be involved in those quarterly reports. So now we're forming the committee in time for the first quarter, which would be January, I guess, is our first quarter.
Yes.
But, or even third quarter or fourth quarter for this fiscal year. But the idea of, let's see whether we get that input, because I am concerned with stretching ourselves too thin on citizen input. We're asking a lot with a charter committee, commission, if you want a financial oversight, probably different people, then it's kind of one of those that we're start getting to those people that just don't have enough time to do it, because otherwise they'd be running for this high-paid job, so.
Right. So the workshop, you're asking citizens, you're advertising and asking citizens.
It's part of the
Is that how
council
that
meeting.
works?
I expect everybody to
Okay.
be here and hear part of it and ask questions. So yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm assuming is the workshop will be, really essentially, everyone will be on the committee,
Gotcha.
so.
So the big add to the budget in coming years is going to be the Squaw Creek project, water road replacement. Is there an financial impact next year besides the engineering work, or is there going to be material labor?
The engineering is, the engineering will be paid for, I think, and Michelle's not here tonight.
So we got all the engineering covered?
Chase, engineering will be wrapped up this fiscal year, right?
Yes. The plan should be set pretty close before the budget even hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be paid out.
Yeah. And then,
Barring any hiccups.
and then it's the actual putting the bid package together and going out to bid and you're going to have to issue debt. That thing will probably be in the $10 million range across, but you'll spread that out across 3 different funds. So you'll do drainage, water, and streets.
But that alone will be a discussion during budgeting.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Right,
that-
but that brings me to the next question is so for citizen input, do we want to have the whole project on a GO as opposed to CO, rather than it's just council voting, or do we want to go to an election? I mean, we're talking multi-7-figure project. So,
I mean,
I think that's
Excuse me, GO, CO,
general obligation.
general obligation bond.
certificate of obligation. So GO goes to an election, and CO is we vote on it here and it's approved.
So to that point of your question, KJ, I feel like that's part of what we explain in our budget workshop, is that type of funding. And I think we have interest in sinking fund
Yeah.
possibly on July 8th or July 22nd. So looking at that's exactly what I'm saying, is that type of questions and in-depth stuff will be part of the budget workshop.
Yep.
So that
Right, so-
question would be asked during the budget workshop, and so what does that mean, and we would describe it, so.
Okay.
Okay, any other?
Yes, Brian, you had mentioned fail-safe for the 2 meetings in September. I know what that means, but can you describe it to the public so that way they know what that means?
Sure. So the council has typically tried to adopt the budget at either the last meeting in August or the first meeting in September, so we meet the statutory deadline of October 1. We have to have 4/5 of the council present. So later on, when we get into the budget calendar, we're going to have a couple of dates, and like if you know you're going to be gone, then we're going to have to adjust those dates. The fail-safe being, if we have to move it back, we have a council meeting on September, I think it's 23rd or 22nd, the second meeting in September to do that in. What we don't want to do is try to have a called meeting on September the 30th under the gun to pass the budget and the tax rate.
And I had one additional question. Ms. Mayor, when you were thinking about this committee, what authority do you want to give this committee? What are you looking at that?
Are you talking about the finance committee?
Yes, ma'am.
I think my vision, as I was just saying, is mainly to educate them. And I don't see them stepping in and saying the budget needs to be changed to this or that. And I'm not going to say today, I can't tell you 100% that's the way it would go, but I think it's the education to make the citizens comfortable with how it works. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Thank
That's
you
what
very
I'm
much for
thinking.
the clarification.
Right? Any other discussion before we move on? Nope. Okay. So number 4.
No action on 3? Post,
You want me to create, what I heard was, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I thought you said we're going to take this kind of slow process of see if during the budget process, the additional discussions can illuminate and enlighten the citizens, and then we can look at some form of oversight committee as we get through the budget process and complete that, and kind of it's quarterly, so.
Right.
I guess there's no action then tonight, or we're going to have action at the next meeting?
To be addressed during the budget process.
Okay. So now on to 4. Okay, discussion, action approving the resolution 2025-09, designating an officer or employee of the city to calculate the no new revenue tax rate and voter approval tax rate for the city of Willow Park as required by Texas Tax Code Section 26.04. Okay, discussion?
You want me
No
to?
discussion.
Yeah, okay. The CAD's going to send out the Truth and Taxation Worksheet. It's roughly 6-7 pages long. It's what we use to calculate the M&O rate and the interest and sinking rate. They need to, council needs to designate someone for them to send that official correspondence to. And of course, I can share that if it's been me since I've been here, but whoever the DOE is, they can share that with the rest of the council. It's a very fun document to review.
So you just need a motion?
It's a resolution packet, if you want to read.
Yep.
Caption.
So we need a motion on that?
Read the resolution. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution of the City Council of the City of Willow Park, Texas, designating an officer or an employee of the City of Willow Park, Texas, to calculate the no new revenue tax rate and voter approval tax rate for the City of Willow Park as required by Texas Tax Code 26.04. Do I name
Yes.
City Manager Brian, and I request that that be City Manager Brian Grimes.
Second.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Are you okay with that, Ms. Mayor? Good, thank you.
Yep. Okay,
So I'll call a vote.
yep.
So all in favor?
All in favor? Okay. All right, so next, discussion action budget calendar for 2025-2026 annual budget. Discussion.
You want me to? Yeah, you want me to say it? You go through it?
Sure.
Okay.
I think we've discussed it a lot, but.
Yes, we have. So a couple of key dates. July 25th, the CAD is going to get us the deadline. Actually, hold on. June 24th or July the 8th, we can do a budget workshop. We're recommending the enterprise fund. July 8th or July 22nd. And I think we're going to lean into July the 8th.
When I'm here,
yes,
that'd be
ma'am.
great. Thank you very much.
For the general fund. The reason being is the CAD will send me the work.
What CAD stands for, please?
Central Appraisal District.
Thank you.
They do the truth and taxation form. We put it in the budget every year. It's a great form. He says facetiously. The idea that I have, it's not in this document, is that at the end of the second workshop, July the 8th, sometime that week, we'll put the preliminary budget together. I will get that to the city secretary, and that'll be the official notice. Statutorily, we're supposed to do it 30 days out. I like to try to do it at least 45, if not 60. July 25th, the CAD will send me the document, and we will start processing the tax rates for M&O and INS. Got our preliminary values back in April. I'm expecting a tax rate decrease at this time. I went very conservative in my model, and I think we're going to probably be a 3 to 3.5 cent at least, perhaps more. Then on the 26th, and Pat, this is kind of where we're going to get into that extra step that Bill Longley was talking about. We're going to have a discussion on the tax rate. Council is going to hold a record vote approving a proposed tax rate. And then we will set a date for a public hearing, and that's going to be on September the 9th. That's at the following council meeting. Is that correct, Pat?
I would have everything you have there on September 9th, except following the public hearing, council votes to adopt. We have to postpone that to the date after we have the public hearing on the budget. So you do everything there except the actual vote on the tax levy.
So we would have to come back literally on the 10th
You could do
or
it-
at a future
any-
date.
You have to do it within a week,
Yeah, within a week?
1 week, 7 days.
What are you doing July 26th?
Wait.
So-
Isn't that September?
All right, sorry. So July 26th, August 26th, you mean?
Okay.
Yeah, August 26th, we're going to have a tax rate, a discussion on the tax rate. We're going to hold a record vote on approving the proposed tax rate, and then we're going to set a date to conduct the public hearing on the budget. So that public hearing will be set for September the 9th.
Okay.
On August the 29th, we're going to run an ad in the community news, and our reporter's right over here. There's a quick deadline because that's on a Tuesday. Their deadline's on Wednesday at noon, so that's why I put this in here, just to kind of remind me. September the 9th, we're going to hold a public hearing on the budget. And you won't vote to adopt the budget, but you do the budget and the tax rate?
Everything can be done that day except for adopting the tax.
Yeah. So we'll adopt the budget on the 9th and then come back within 1 week and adopt the tax rate on the 10th or whatever. That's an extra step the wonderful Texas legislature. Thank you, Mr. Stickland. We appreciate your efforts. That's an extra step that the state has required us to do. And so we will come back and have a called meeting.
So, you're saying that the August 26th is a meeting, regular council meeting? Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Then the September date, we're going to have 2 council meetings that week?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The 9th and then
The 11th.
the 10th or the 11th. I mean, if you want to meet on a Wednesday night, we can. You want to meet on a Thursday night, we can do that as well.
Do we need to set that now or come back?
We'll set that in August.
Okay, so we're
But
not worrying about that part.
The question I have for council is, do y'all see any conflicts on August 26th, September the 9th, or any time after September the 9th? Is anybody going on a vacation?
16th, there's no way I can be here.
Okay,
I'm out the 13th through the 24th.
okay. Nate,
Mayor.
unless you're stuck on 30 somewhere?
Exactly.
I should be here.
I'll be here.
Okay. Then I would recommend, did anybody have a problem with meeting on a Wednesday night, the following on the 10th? Pat, that would just be a real quick, come in, adopt the tax rate, be done? Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay. All right, then that's the calendar.
And we don't need a motion on that or anything, Pat?
I would, just move.
Go ahead. Okay, so I have a motion on that?
Miss Mayor, before we do that, Rose, can you hear me? Yes, sir. Can we do something on the home page that has all of the budget calendar, everything at the bottom, kind of like next to Squaw Creek, where we have all this information easily findable on the home page of our website, and then also put something out tomorrow in regards to the calendar and then when it's all available to the public?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah,
Anybody else?
I like that idea to make it similar to the Squaw Creek. Like, here's where all the budget calendar, all the budget meetings are coming up and the inputs.
So we
And it-
filled the room up.
And once we get attachments and budgets and things like that, just go ahead and add it to the website.
Yeah.
Put it there, I like that idea. I'll make a
Homepage.
motion that we approve the budget calendar for fiscal year 2025-26 as presented in the packet.
With an addition
Addition
of September 10th for adoption of the tax rate.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. So any discussion? Anything else? All in favor? Okay. Next, number 6, discussion action to authorize Consultants Hub International to seek competitive proposals for health, dental, vision, life, and short-term disability benefits for city employees. So we'll open it up for discussion.
So I'm going to ask council to postpone this until the June 24th meeting. We received a quote from our current provider, and I'd like to have some discussion with the mayor before we go forward on that. I think it's initially very advantageous for us to table this. And there's no time frame, Pat, when we can still do this on the 24th. I don't think it's going to.
As long as you have enough time if you have to go out to bid. I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
spirit.
we'll have time.
I'll make a motion to postpone.
Okay. All in favor? All right, moving along. So next, we're going to executive session. Section 5510.071, consultation with attorney City of the Willow Park versus Half and Associates. Number 8, Section 551.074 is Personal Matters City Manager Mid-Year Review. So we are going to executive session. Thank you. We'll be back. 7:40.
7:40.
Okay, so there is no action on the Willow Park versus Half and Associates. And as far as the personal matters, city manager's midterm review, where we've settled in is Brian is doing a great job right now. We're going to carry forward. Let's see. Okay. We've got the time. Anything else everybody needs to go over?
Councilmember comments, please?
Yeah.
Can we all just pray for Cole Thompson and his
Yes.
wife Nikki? I've known them for 30-plus years, and he needs our prayers more than ever now. He's a great person, great part of our community. Nikki is phenomenal. They have a wonderful family, and if you didn't know, he suffered a major heart attack, and we need to have some, sorry, I'm getting caught up. We need to have major prayer warriors right now for him. He needs our prayers.
Yes.
Cole.
Cole.
C-O-L-E.
Yep.
Cole.
The family is who runs the turkey trot. Nikki's mom started the turkey trot in Aledo that we had, and Nikki was a big part of helping with our golf tournament years ago when we had the Rayfield Wright golf tournament. So she's helped us out in Willow Park. So very, very good family.
And there's another family still of the lightning strike that's still out there that I need to check back into myself. But they also need our prayers too ongoing, so.
A couple of quick announcements. We will be closed on June 19th for Juneteenth. We're going to have several staff take vacations and do some trainings as well. We have Michelle and
It's a national holiday, correct?
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's why we're following the national.
Yes, Andy and Michelle are down at TML right now at a budget workshop. And then we have a legislative wrap-up on the 26th and the 27th in Georgetown. I think Pat's going with us and the mayor's going.
Yepper.
And myself, and I think Tony is going as well. Okay, I didn't know the full roster, but I knew I had the big guns. And so that's it, Madam Mayor.
I do have one announcement. Through our Parks Department, Mandy McCarley and our staff applied for the Green Ribbon Landscape funds from TxDOT, and we were awarded the grant.
Yes.
We look forward to progressing on that. Let's see, it's the fixed amount of $400,000.
Whoa!
So, yes, so we're very excited about that, and we'll get to working on what that's going to look like. So we're beautifying the entrance to Willow Park, so.
Okay, so we need to adjourn?
Yes, so.
Yes.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second? Done. Thank you.
All in favor?
I barely tapped it. There you go.